why we need to continually love learning. Hello, I'm Malcolm Cox and welcome to Tuesday Teaching Tips, and today we're talking about awesome Apollos, a man who loved learning. And indeed we're going to have a several part series on Apollos because he is so awesome. And I'm indebted to my friend Rob Payne for some of the ideas I'm going to share here. We had a very stimulating conversation last week about Apollos, and it struck me that he is so much the model of what I would like to be more like, and I expect that's true for you in your teaching. It tells us here in Acts chapter 18 about Apollos. It says that he was a native of Alexandria. He came to Ephesus. He was a learned man with a thorough knowledge of the scriptures. He had been instructed in the way of the Lord, and he spoke with great fervour and taught about Jesus accurately, as though he knew only the baptism of John. He began to speak boldly in the synagogue, and when Priscilla and Aquila heard him, they invited him to their home and explained to him the way of God more adequately. When he wanted to go to Achaia, the brothers and sisters encouraged him and wrote to the disciples there to welcome him. When he arrived, he was a great help to those who by grace had believed. For he vigorously refuted his Jewish opponents in public debate, proving from the scriptures that Jesus was the Messiah. I would love to be more like Apollos, being a great help to people, being effective in my communication and about Jesus the Messiah. So that's what we're going to talk about today and the next few weeks, in fact, with a different emphasis each day. And today we're going to focus upon the fact that he is described here as a learned man. A learned man. This word is logios in the Greek. It means one who's learned a great deal of the heritage, the intellectual heritage and a culture. Someone who is erudite, someone who has learned a great deal, and someone who is eloquent, able to express those ideas. And that's who he is. And part of this is almost certainly to do with the fact that he's from Alexandria. Now, Alexandria in the time of the New Testament was an incredibly powerful city, a center of shipping and trade, but also of culture and scholarship. There was a very large Jewish community living there, certainly at least 10,000 and possibly as many as 1 million, according to Philo at that period. It had a library of over 700,000 volumes. Now, that might not sound a lot if you compare it to a modern library today like the British Library, but of its day, it means it was the foremost library in the known world at that time. An incredible place for learning. The Septuagint was translated there in Alexandria, and indeed Alexandrian Jews were known across the world. They even had their own synagogue in Jerusalem, as we find out in Acts chapter 6, verse 9. So if you wanted to learn something, anything, you wanted to be in Alexandria, and Apollos was there. What does this tell us about Apollos? Well, I think there are three things we can take from this that might help us with our ongoing learning. The first is this: that we do well to make learning our aim. Just the fact that Apollos was in Alexandria does not mean he was going to learn. Those 700,000 volumes aren't any use unless someone opens them, reads them, studies them, and learns from them. You can be in the right place, but you still got to have the right attitude. You and I are blessed with the resources around us, but are we making the most use of them? We live at a period of time when learning is easier in terms of the material we need to find to learn from than any other period in human history. But are we making the most of it? It's got to come from the heart first. A learning person is first of all someone who is hungry to learn. Let's pray for that spirit. The second thing we learn is that he must have spent a great deal of time using those resources. He found the right resources to help him. He was a learned man who knew the Old Testament really well. The same thing is true for us. We need to go to the right sources. Now, I said earlier, there's plenty of material out there. That's true, an overwhelming amount of material. But do we go to the right places? Where are you going to get your education, your ongoing theological, spiritual education these days so that you can teach other people? So I went to the London School of Theology and studied and learned there. And so I have my diploma of higher education, my diploma in theology, which I received in 2009. There's the picture of my receiving my scroll, if you like. I'm glad I did that. Behind me on the wall there, the long picture, is a picture of my classmates of one particular year while I was studying there. Do you need to go to an institution? Do you need to study at a particular place? Do you need to do an online master's like my friend Peter Devon is about to start over in Ireland? Or is there some local college you could go to? For me, it was very handy that the London School of Theology was just up the road and I used to cycle there to lectures. But is there somewhere you could go to learn and study and develop? Or perhaps it's reading, more reading and more reading. You can see behind me I have plenty of books, and I have plenty more books outside of your sightline. But I need to be reading the right books, books that stretch me. One book like that is by my friend Dr. Andy Boachi, who has this book, Death and Life, Resurrection, Restoration and Rectification in Paul's Letter to the Galatians. Now that is a book that's stretching my theological, spiritual and intellectual capacities. And I have started it, Andy, in case you watch this. I have started it. I'm on page 13 at the moment. And I read a fair bit of it a little while ago. I put it down, back on this bookshelf. I need to pick it up again. And I like books like this, though I find them challenging because they stretch me. We need to be stretched, or we're really not going to learn very much, are we? So what books are you reading that are stretching you? Read some books that are relatively easy, but read some that are going to challenge your thinking and your intellectual capacity. It's good for us. We don't know what we can cope with until we stretch ourselves. So the first thing we learn from Apollos is that we need to make it our aim to be learned. The second is to go to the right sources. That was Alexandria for him. And even then, of course, Priscilla and Aquila helped him to learn all the more, which actually is the third point, which is keep at it. Keep at your learning. You and I know we've never arrived having learned everything. And I like the spirit of Apollos, though he was thoroughly learned and he was effective and he knew the scriptures. When he got to meet Priscilla and Aquila, they explained the word of God to him more adequately. It doesn't give us any indication that he fought to that. He argued against it. In fact, instead, it seems that he is confirmed as being someone trustworthy by other disciples, other followers of Jesus as the time goes by. We'll talk more about that another time. But that's what they did. They taught him the way of God more adequately. Are you open to learning new things? Keep on going. So Apollos, awesome Apollos, an incredible man, a learned man. But you and I can become learned. Maybe not as much as Apollos, maybe not quite to the standard of my friend Dr. Boachi. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that we grow, that we continue to learn, that we're more learned next month, by the end of this year, than we are now. And I'm recording this in January. Perhaps it's a good time for us to assess and consider our learning goals for 2019. In what way and how will you, what resources will you use to grow to be more learned than you were at the beginning of this year? I'd love to know. So please let me know what you think about this, what you think about Apollos, what you think about learning in general, resources you've used or heard about, questions about learning, questions about resources to use. I would love to know. So please leave a comment anywhere you hear or see this recording, and leave it publicly so that we can learn from each other, because we learn best when we learn in community. Hit that like button, ding the bell, subscribe to the channel, and you'll be notified of new recordings as when they come out. And if you are listening to this on iTunes or some other kind of podcast provider, then please do leave a review. That will really help the visibility of these recordings so more people can find them. And do pass the link on to anyone you think might find it useful and interesting. Until the next time, I hope you have a terrific Tuesday and a wonderful week. Take care and God bless.